The held elder raised a hand to quiet everyone. His voice was heavy. It is decided, for the sake of peace and safety, and until such a time as the gods reveal the truth, Nneka and her daughters will be banished from Amago. They must leave at once before night falls. He closed his eyes painfully as he spoke those words, as if it hurt him deeply to utter them. Some of the other elders nodded, though one or two turned away with tears in their eyes. And so it was that judgment was pronounced. Nneka let out a low cry of despair and clutched her daughters. Adese's face had gone pale, but she held her chin high, determined to stay strong for her mother and sister. Amara cried openly, innocence shattered by the cruel turn of events. Under Obegili's supervision, a few of the palace guards approached Nneka's family. One roughly yanked Nneka's arm, pulling her away from the courtyard towards the gate. Adese and Amara followed, holding onto their mother and to each other, as if linked by an invisible chain that nothing could break. Obiageli watched, her face composed, though triumph flashed in her eyes. As they were marched out of the palace, Nneka asked in a trembling voice, "May I, at least, take some belongings? Clothes, the children's things?" A guard scoffed. Obegeli answered coldly, "There is no time, and nothing in the palace belongs to a traitor. Go and be thankful we spare your lives." Nneka bit her lips to keep from saying something that might worsen their situation. She had to protect her girls now, at all costs. They passed through the palace gate. Outside, a crowd had gathered despite the elders trying to keep things calm. When the people saw Nneka and the princesses being led out, a mix of sorrow and anger swelled. Some women who had loved Nneka wailed and reached out as if to touch her one last time, while others pulled them back, whispering, "Don't go near. She might have evil powers." A few hot-headed young men shouted, "Leave! Leave! You killed our king!" They threw small stones at them. One stone struck at Nneka's arms. Another one threw dirty at Adese's skirt, but the group kept moving. Adese shielded her mother with her body as best as she could. And the village woman, one of Nneka's old friends, bravely stepped in front of the mob and shouted, "Have you all lost your minds? Don't you harm them. Let them go in peace if they must go." This woman, Ozioma, had tears streaming down her face. She thrust a small bundle of food and water guard toward Nneka. "Take, sister, take," she said in a choked voice. Nneka hesitated, overwhelmed by this kindness in a sea of hate. Then she took the bundle and whispered, "Thank you. Thank you. May the gods bless you." Immediately, one of Obegeli's loyal guards tried to snatch the bundle away. They deserve nothing. But the head elder, who had followed them out, raised his hand and said, "Let them leave. Let them have it. We are not executing them. Do not treat them like animals." The guard stepped back, and Ozoma's offering remained clutched in Nneka's shaking hands. With that, the gate of Amago were shut behind the exiled queen and princesses. The sky above was a brilliant orange dusk approaching. Under other circumstances, it would have been a beautiful evening, the sun sinking beyond the hills, cicadas starting to hum. But for Nneka and her daughters, it was the darkest night of their lives. They walked, half in a daze, along the narrow path leading away from the village. Nneka didn't even know where to go. They had no home outside Amago, no king nearby she could trust to take them in. So they just kept moving, away from the jeering voices that gradually faded behind them. Nneka held the little bundle of food close, and Amara carried the guard of water. Adese walked beside her mother, one arm firmly around her to steady her, though her own legs felt weak. When they had gone some distance and could no longer see the lights of cooking fires in Amago, they paused in a clearing by the roadside. Night was falling, and the forest around them began to buzz with nocturnal life. The realization of their situation weighed on them fully. Amara sank to the ground, sobbing anew. Mama, what will we do? She cried. Where will we go? I'm so scared. Nneka knelt and hugged her daughter tightly. She had been quiet since leaving, but now she found her voice for her children's sake. Hush, my child. The night may be dark now, but dawn will come. We are still together. As long as we have each other, we will find a way. Though her own heart was heavy with fear and sorrow, Nneka tried to sound reassuring. Adeze beat back her tears, trying to be strong as the eldest. Mama, maybe we should find shelter for the night. Off the road, under those trees there. We can light a small fire to keep animals away. She looked around. In the dim blue of twilight, she could make out some palm trees and thick shrubs. Not far off the path was a large abandoned hut or shed, perhaps an old hunter's shelter or a wayfarer rest that had fallen into disuse. It leaned a little to one side and the thatch roof had holes, but it was better than nothing. Together, the three of them moved toward that old shelter. Adeze used a stick to poke around inside, disturbing a couple of lizards that ran away. It was empty save for a broken clay pot and some dry plantain leaves in a corner. Nneka helped Tamara settle on the leaves and then sat down herself, the exhaustion hitting her like a heavy load. Adeze found a few dry twigs and branches around the hut. Using a small flint stone she carried, a keepsake her father had given her once for lighting lamps, she managed to spark a little fire. The flame cast flickering shadows on their faces. They opened the bundle Ozioma had given. Inside were two small wraps of cocoyam and vegetable soup and a half loaf of millet bread. It wasn't much for three hungry people, but Nneka insisted her daughters eat first. The girls tried to make their mother take a share, but she said, Seeing you eat gives me strength. Don't worry, I will take a little. They divided the food as best as they could and ate quietly, each lost in thought. Nneka chewed slowly on a piece of cocoyam, hardly tasting it. She kept replaying the scene of accusations in her mind, and the image of King Omenuko's kind eyes as he thanked her in his final moment. It made no sense. Who would believe she could kill him? Obegeli planned it all. She murmured bitterly. She must have. She must have the poison. The poison. It was her doing. And then she planted those things to blame me. Saying it aloud made the treachery all the more real. Adeze nodded solemnly. I knew it, Mama. I saw her face when you confronted her. She is wicked. I never imagined such evil in her heart. Amara sniffled, resting her head on Nneka's lap. Papa is gone, and we couldn't even bury him, she said softly between tears. Nneka stroked her younger daughter's hair gently and sang a low lullaby to calm her. The same lullaby she used to sing when the girl had nightmares of thunder as a toddler. Adeze added wood to the little fire and blinked back tears as she listened. Despite all that had happened, the familiar melody of her mother's soothing song gave her a shred of comfort. They huddled together in that drafty hut as night deepened, the dense forest around them alive with sounds. An owl screeched in the distance, insects droned in the warm night air. Adeze remained awake long after her mother and sister fell into an uneasy sleep. She resolved in her heart that she would protect them both somehow. And one day, the truth would come out. She prayed silently to Chukwu, the Great Spirit, for strength and for justice. Thus began the exile of Nneka and her daughters, from a life of comfort and honor They were reduced in an instant to wandering outcasts, uncertain of survival, but they had each other, and the bonds of their love would be a light in the darkness of the days to come. The next morning dawned with a pale sky and the chirping of birds, but the queen Nneka and her daughter greeted it with heavy hearts. They woke in the rickety shelter, aching from sleeping on the hard ground. And for a moment, each of them imagined they were back in their comfortable beds in Amago, and that the previous day had just been a terrible dream. Reality set in quickly as the cool morning air blew through the holes in the hut walls. They had only the clothes on their back and the remains of the food from Ozioma. Nneka gently nudged Daisy and Amara awake. "We must gather our strength and think of what to do," she said softly. Her voice was hoarse, both from yesterday's crying and from the sleeping in the damp air. Daisy rubbed her eyes and nodded. She stepped outside to stretch her limbs. They had taken refuge not far from a narrow stream that meandered through the bush. The soft gurgle of water was inviting. "I will fetch some water and maybe find some fruit or edible leaves nearby." "Mama," Adeze offered. Nneka gave a nod, appreciating her daughter's resolve. Amara, still weary and sad, stayed close to her mother's side, holding Nneka's hand tightly as if afraid she might disappear. Adeze found a path down to the stream, carrying the empty gourd. As she knelt beside the water edge and rinsed her face, she heard a rustling in the underground behind her. Startled, she stood up quickly, heart pounding. In this unfamiliar outskirt, it could be a small animal or a person. Remembering they were effectively alone and unprotected, she braced herself to run back to her mother if needed. "Hello?" A cautious male voice spoke from beyond a cluster of ferns. "Princess Adeze, is that you?" Adese's breath caught. She recognized that voice. "Obinna," she whispered. From the foliage emerged a young man of about 20 years. He was tall and had kind, intelligent eyes. Adese had seen him before many times in the village. He was the son of Ozioma, the woman who had tried to defend them. Obinna often helped his mother sell produce in the marketplace, and he had always been friendly to the royal household, running errands or delivering messages for the elders. She also remembered, with a slight flush on her cheeks, amidst all the turmoil, that Obinna had danced in the youth masquerade during the New Yam festival, and he had occasionally stolen glances at her during village gatherings, but she never imagined seeing him here. Obinna stepped forward, hands slightly raised to show he meant no harm. Over his shoulder was slung a cloth bag and he held a walking stick in the other hand. I hope I'm not intruding," he said quietly. "Your mother's friend Ozioma, my mother, sent me to look for you. She was worried." He looked down, a mixture of sadness and relief on his face. "I saw what happened yesterday. We all did. My mother couldn't sleep, thinking about you three out here. So, at first light, she sent me with a few things." He held up the cloth bag. Adesi felt tears prick her eyes. In the harshness they have faced, this kindness was overwhelming. "Obinna, you shouldn't be here. It's dangerous for you. If Obegili finds out." He shook his head. "I was careful. I took a long route, and I left before the village fully woke. I will be missed at home soon, but I had to come." Gently, he took the guard from her and knelt to fill it with fresh water. "Let's go to your mother. I don't have much time." Adeze led Obinna to the little hut. When Nneka saw him, she stood protectively in front of Amara, but Adeze quickly explained, "Mama, this is Obinna, Ozioma's son. He's there to help us." Nneka recognized his face and recalled that he had always been polite and helpful in the village. She relaxed slightly and greeted him with a warm smile. "Thank you for coming, my son." Obinna bowed his head respectfully, then opened the cloth bag. Inside were a few wrapped foods, some boiled yams, a small pot of palm oil stew, and a calabash of fresh wine. There was also a thin blanket and a pair of old sandals. It's not much, he said apologetically. My mother gathered what she could in a hurry. She said more will raise suspicion. Nneka's eyes filled with grateful tears. Your mother is a true friend. And you are very brave to do this. She motioned for him to sit on a log near the hut, and they all sat together as she and the girls ate a bit of the food, enough to feel nourished, while trying to save some for later. Amara even managed a small smile after sipping a little sweet palm wine. It felt good on her parched throat. Obinna looked at their tired faces and the makeshift shelter. What will you do now? He asked gently. Nneka sighed. I don't know yet. We have no family nearby. My father's people are in a far village. To reach there, we would have to travel for days on foot. And even then, who knows if they would accept us, branded as we are. She closed her eyes to hold back the anguish. I keep hoping that the truth will come out and we can return home. But that may be foolish. Adeze put a hand on her mother's shoulder. Mama, I believe it will. The gods are watching. Perhaps they will send a sign to our people. Obinna hesitated, then spoke. Many in the village, they mourn the king and they are angry. But some don't believe the accusations against you. My mother doesn't believe it. I don't believe it. We know your character. He paused, clenching his fist around a twitch. However, people are afraid to speak up. Obegili has taken control swiftly. She keeps Prince Ikenna mostly indoors, and she's making a lot of decisions herself, saying it's all for the boy's protection. He glanced around as if to ensure no one else was listening in the forest. There are rumors, he continued in a lower voice. Some say that at the funeral rites last night, the oracle of the ancestors gave a warning, something about the truth being covered by darkness in the palace. But Obegeli dismissed it and said the oracle spoke about needing to cleanse the land of evil, which she claimed meant you. He looked apologetically at Nneka. Nneka shook her head. She twisted even the words of the spirit to her favor. My goodness. Amara sniffled and leaned into her mother's side. Nneka cuddled her close. Adeze asked, what of the elders? Do they all just bow to her now? Obinna frowned. The elders are in a difficult spot. Some don't trust her. But with the prince as king and her position as queen mother, they can't openly challenge her without cause. She has also brought her own family men into the palace for support. Some elders fear more conflict if they oppose her. He took a breath, then added, also, strange things happened. The king's funeral, it was supposed to be a great ceremony today, but a freak storm blew in last night out of nowhere. Wild winds that toppled some trees near the palace and heavy rain that doused the funeral pyres. People are saying the gods are restless. Nneka looked up at that, hope and sadness mingling. Perhaps my husband's spirit is not at peace. He knows injustice was done. Her voice quavered. Obinna, if such signs continue, maybe the council will seek a second opinion from a more distant oracle who Obegili cannot influence. He nodded. I pray so. In the meantime, I will help you as much as I can. I can bring food every day or two, quietly. I know this forest well from hunting with my uncles, so I can avoid being seen. Nneka reached out and touched his hand gracefully. You are risking so much. I cannot thank you enough, my son. Obinna flushed slightly at the thought and shook his head. It's the right thing to do. And he glanced at Adeze. I could not bear to think of all of you suffering out here. Adeze met his eyes and gave him a small warm smile that made his heart flutter despite the grim situation. They discussed briefly about their plan. Nneka and her daughters would stay around this area for now. It was about an hour's walk from the village outskirts, far enough to avoid casual discovery, but near enough that Obinna or Ozioma might get news to them. Obina told them of a more hidden spot further off the path, a little clearing beyond a cluster of bamboo by the stream, where he could leave supplies if necessary. He also offered to help them reinforce the hut next time, perhaps patch the roof. Before he left, Adeze walked with him back towards the stream. She felt a mix of gratitude and awkward fluttering in her stomach, feelings she hadn't had a chance to explore before, given her sheltered life. Thank you, Obina, she said softly as they reached the water. Truly, you have been like a lifeline. Obina looked down shyly, then met her gaze. I wish I could do more. You've always been kind to everyone at Daisy. You and your family don't deserve this. He hesitated, then added, when I was a boy, I remember once I fell and hurt myself near the palace gate, and your mother took me in and treated my wound as if I were her own. I never forgot that. So think of this as repaying that debt of kindness, even if only a little. Adese's eyes glistened. She remembered that incident faintly. Her mother had always been caring. You owe us nothing, Obinna, but you have our everlasting thanks. In a gentle impulse, she reached out and squeezed his hand. For a moment, the two young people stood there, hands touching, the morning sun filtering through the leaves and illuminating them in golden light. Despite the hardships, Adisi felt a warmth in her heart that she had thought gone forever when her father died. Obina cleared his throat softly, reluctant to break the contact but knowing he needed to return before his absence caused alarm. I will come again tomorrow if I can. If I leave something at the bamboo grove and cannot stay, I will mark the spot with a cross pair of sticks so you will know where to look. Adesi nodded. They parted with a final exchange look of understanding and newfound affection, and Obina slipped away into the forest as quietly as he had come. Adesi went back to her mother and sister. Her spirits lifted slightly. She told them all that Obina had said. Nneka felt relieved that they had a friend watching out for them and that not everyone had swallowed Obegili's lies. Amara managed a faint smile hearing about Obina's kindness. In her 12 years old life, she had known villagers to be good-hearted, and it comforted her that goodness still existed. Over the next several days, the exiled family settled into a routine of survival. Each morning, Adeze or Nneka would look for eatable roots, nuts, or wild fruits. They found a cluster of plantain trees and were able to harvest some plantains to roast. Amara, who was quick with hands, fashioned a simple fishing line from a vine and a bent needle from the hut's debris. With patience, she managed to catch a couple of small fish in the stream, which they cooked in leaves. It wasn't a feast by any means, but they managed to keep hunger at bay. True to his words, Obinna came as often as he safely could. Sometimes he appeared in person, other times he left a parcel at a designated hidden spot. He brought precious items, a cooking pot, a knife, a sleeping mat that his mother insisted they take, more food, and some herbs for medicine. He brought news as well. The village was restless. Obegiri had begun making changes. She had dismissed a few long-time palace servants, replacing them with people loyal to her. She commanded a higher tribute of yams from the farmers, claiming it was to bolster the royal storehouses for Prince Ikena's benefit. But many suspected she was hoarding resources. The villagers murmured that in all his years, King Omenuko never demanded extra yams after harvest. Rather, he gave from his own barn if someone was in need. This action sowed seeds of resentment. There were also signs that perhaps the spirits were displeased. One day, Obina reported that lightning struck the great Iroko tree in the village square, splitting a large branch off. To the elders, that was a bad omen. Another day, a mysterious illness struck some of the livestock in Amago. Goats and chickens fell ill and died without apparent cause. Some whispered it was the late king's cause for the injustice done. Despite this event, no one openly connected them to Obegeli's wrongdoing yet. Fear still clouded people's mind, and Obegeli herself maintained a facade of piety. She organized regular prayers and sacrifices for the king's spirit and the protection of the village, but conveniently framed every misfortune as further proof that a witch, meaning Nneka, had brought a curse that only time and penance would lift. During this time, Obegeli was not at ease. In the privacy of her chamber, she was tormented by nightmares. She dreamed of King Omenuko walking in the palace at night, calling out her name in a voice full of sorrow. In one dream, she saw him holding Ikena's hand and walking away from her into a thick fog, no matter how she screamed for her son to stay. In another, the king's eyes turned into those of a snake, and he asked her, "Have you tasted the fruit of your deeds?" She would wake up in a cold sweat, heart pounding. Yet each morning, she steeled herself and pushed those dreams aside, focusing on solidifying her power. Prince Ikenna, for his part, was confused and lonely. He missed his father dearly, and he also missed Nneka and his half-sisters. At times, he asked his mother innocently, "Where is Mama Nneka? Where are Adaeze and Amara? I miss them." Each time, Obegeli's face would harden and she would reply, "They are gone, my son. They were not who we thought they were. Do not dwell on them." She kept him busy with tutors and supervised play, and showered him with gifts to keep his mind occupied. Carved wooden toys, sweet coconut treats, which he accepted quietly, though it didn't fill the void in his heart. One evening, as Obegeli was preparing to retire, her son approached her hesitantly. "Mother," Ikenna said softly, "I heard some people saying that Mama Nneka hurt father, but I don't understand. She was always so kind. She loved father. Why would she hurt him?" His young eyes searched his mother's face for answers. Obegeli felt a stab of annoyance and a tinge of guilt. She knelt to look him directly in the eye and spoke firmly. "Sometimes people pretend to be good, but hide bad intentions in their heart. Nneka was jealous, my son, jealous that you were the heir, jealous of our family's happiness. Such jealousy can turn a heart evil. That is why we had to send her away, so she cannot hurt us or anyone else." She laid a hand on Ikena's shoulder. "You must trust me. I will always protect you. I am your mother." Ikenna nodded slowly, but a troubled frown stayed on his face. He remembered how Nneka would tell him stories or gently scold him if he was rude, and how Adaeze would carve little clay figures for him to play with, and how Amara made him laugh by chasing him around the courtyard. It didn't match the image of monsters his mother painted, but he was only 10 and had no power to question the official narrative. So he kept his confusion to himself and allowed Obegeli to hug him and send him off to bed. As weeks passed, Nneka and her daughters endured life in exile with as much grace as they could muster. Nneka often led her girls in quiet prayers at dawn and dusk, asking God and the ancestors for strength and vindication. Sometimes in the evenings, to lift their spirit, she would tell them folktales, stories they knew by heart, but which reminded them of home and of moral truth. One night, huddled around a small fire, she told a story about the tortoise and the lion. How the clever but mischievous tortoise tricked the Lion King and caused his own downfall through greed. Adaeze and Amara listened intently, and they all saw the parallel Obiageli might have schemed and seemed to triumph. But greed and treachery often led to ruin in the old tales. These stories gave them hope that perhaps, like the greedy tortoise, the wicked queen's victory was only temporary. During the day, the sisters would sometimes sing softly while doing chores, harmonizing on familiar songs their father had loved. Their clear voices echoed through the forest. To any hunter or traveler passing by unseen, it might have sounded like forest spirits singing, hauntingly beautiful and full of yearning. In those moments, Daisy especially found solace. Though cast out, she still had her family and their love. And now even the budding affection of Obinna, which glowed quietly in her heart like a lamp. Adaeze and Obinna's bond grew with each secret meeting. When he could linger, they would walk a little along the stream, talking about their childhood memories or dreams. Adaeze confessed her fears for her mother and sister, and Obinna would comfort her with gentle words and sometimes just his steady presence. He told her about his aspirations, how he once thought of traveling to the big coastal city to learn a trade, but he stayed to help his mother. In turn, Adaeze shyly admitted that she had loved watching the masquerade dances and sometimes dreamed of learning more about the wider world beyond Amago. They found in each other a source of strength and a glimpse of happiness amid sorrow. It was an innocent love, blossoming like a wildflower in the middle of a desolate road. About a month passed in this way. Then, as the next moon waned, events took a dramatic turn. The signs of discontent in Amago could no longer be ignored. The yam crop, which was planted after the New Yam Festival, had begun to sprout poorly. Many seedlings withered, and farmers were alarmed. Murmurs spread that the land was cursed because of the injustice done to Nneka. The earth goddess Annie has been insulted. She does not accept our offerings, some said, recalling that Nneka, as the first wife, used to play a key role in certain agricultural rituals alongside the king. With her gone in disgrace, perhaps the goddess withheld her favor. Finally, the Council of Elders decided that an extraordinary step must be taken. They announced a plan to consult a powerful oracle in a distant town to seek guidance on why misfortune hovered over Amago. This news reached Nneka in the forest through Obinna. Nneka was heartened. If the oracle is true and just, it will reveal the treachery, she said, gripping Obinna's hand in gratitude as he delivered the message. Still, she worried Obiageli might try to interfere with or misinterpret the oracle's messages as she had done before. Obiageli, upon hearing of the elders' plan, was deeply unsettled. She tried to dissuade them, insisting that what was needed was simply more sacrifices to appease the cause. But the elders were adamant. Too many bad omens had piled up. In fact, some of the elders themselves suspected that perhaps they had been misled about Nneka's guilt, though none said so openly yet. One or two privately went to the very old priest of Ani, who lived near the village shrine, and asked his counsel. That priest closed his eyes and said cryptically, "When a snake sheds its skin, the old skin lies exposed. When the sun rises, dew evaporates to reveal what was hidden. Go seek the truth, for it cries from the earth." This only strengthened their resolve to get an unbiased oracle's insight. So, a delegation of 3 elders and the chief priest Okeke set out for the famous oracle of Achi. A day's journey away, Obiageli was invited to send a representative as well, to show transparency and to send one of her loyal kinsmen. Prince Ikenna was left in the care of a trusted village aunt during this journey. During the elder's absence, Obiageli was on edge. Each night, her nightmares worsened. She started to see shadows at the corners of her eyes in the daytime too. Once, she swore she saw the king's silhouette in the doorway of the throne room, only to blink and realize it was a trick of light. Guilt, that persistent thorn in her heart, was pricking harder. She tried to drown it with justifications. It was for my son. It was my right. They would have taken everything from me. She even paid another visit in secret to Abogidi. The old herbalist, not for poison this time, but for a charm of protection and a potion to help her sleep without dreams. Abogidi, who had heard rumors of the village's plight, gave her a small talisman of woven herbs but said pointedly, "No charm can silence a guilty conscience forever, my dear." Obegili left it in a huff, refusing to acknowledge any guilt. When the elders returned from the oracle, they looked wary yet determined. They called a meeting in the village square that very evening, inviting all, including Obegili. Word spread like harmattan fire that the oracle's message was in. People gathered as lanterns were lit around the square and the sun dipped low, painting the horizon blood red. Nneka, of course, was not there to speak for herself, but many villagers arrived murmuring that perhaps justice was at hand. Ozioma stood in the crowd with Obinna at her side. Both felt their hearts pounding. The oldest elder stepped forward, holding in his hand a sacred palm frond which symbolized truth. The crowd fell silent. Obegili stood with her loyal guards flanking her, her face a mask of composure, though her stomach churned. The elder announced, "We have consulted the great oracle of Achi. We asked why our land suffers since the passing of our beloved king, and what must be done to restore balance and peace." He paused, and in the expectant hush, one could hear the crackle of torches and the distant cry of a nightbird. The oracle's answers was clear. The problems in Amago, it said, stem from a hidden crime that has angered the gods and the ancestors. The spirit of King Omenuko cries for justice. The oracle said the one who poisoned the king still lives in his house. At these words, a shock rippled through the crowd. Obegili felt as if the ground had tilted under her. She opened her mouth, her carefully painted confidence cracking. What does that mean? Surely the oracle does not know what happened here. We already punished the guilty. The chief priest, Okeke, fixed Obegili with a stern gaze. The oracle knew much. It said the true culprit wears the guise of the king's protector, that the innocent was cast out and must be found and cleansed of wrongs, and the guilty must face consequences or the land will not heal. A murmur surged. Many eyes turned to Obegili now, suspicion dawning like a sunrise after a long dark night. Obegili's heart thundered. She raised her hands dramatically. "This is madness. Are you accusing me, the queen mother, of such a heinous deed? After I lost my husband too, have I not been weeping and praying for our land?" Her voice was shrill with disbelief and fear. Some of her guards shifted uneasily. Even they had heard the conviction in the priestess' words. One elder stepped forward, a man who had initially supported Obegili's claims. He looked at her with disappointment. "Obegili, the oracle's words leave little room for doubt. It points to a false accusation and a betrayal from within the palace. We must investigate this earnestly. For the sake of Amago, if you are innocent, you will welcome such an investigation to clear your name. Or if not," he didn't finish the sentence, but the threat hung in the air. Obegili felt trapped. She realized the tide was turning and her one solid support was slipping. In desperation, she blurted, "Perhaps the oracle was deceived. Or perhaps, yes, perhaps Nneka went to that same oracle and twisted its vision to blame me. She is cunning with herbs and charms. Is she not?" She clung to her old strategy of blame, but her words sounded historical and thin now. People in the crowd exchanged skeptical glances. Ozioma's voice rang out, bold in the quiet. "Nneka has not been anywhere near Achi. She has been struggling to survive out there while you enjoyed the palace. How could she influence an oracle a day's journey away? Enough of these lies." Encouraged, another voice shouted, "We want the truth. Bring back Nneka for a fair hearing." And another Yes, bring her back. She served us as queen for years. She should speak. The chant began to rise. Bring them back! Bring them back! The villagers, floored by the revelations and their own guilt at how they had treated Nneka, now clamored to make amends, to hear directly from the accused and accuser facing each other. The elders moved decisively. Quiet, people of Amago, the chief elder called. We shall send a party at first light tomorrow to find Nneka and her daughters. We believe they are in the forest nearby. We will escort them home with respect and ensure their safety. Then, in the presence of all, we will conduct an oath swearing and trust saying ceremony at the shrine of Ani. Before the gods and the entire community, the truth shall be laid bare. The crowd murmured in agreement. The mood was somber but charged with anticipation. Obiageli stood trembling. She realized this was the end game. She had to think fast. If Nneka returned, she might not have concrete evidence, but the weight of public opinion was already shifting, and the oath swearing ceremony, a traditional ordeal where each party would swear innocence on pain of divine retribution, terrified Obiageli. She believed in the gods enough to fear their wrath if she lied under such sacred circumstances. Many tales were told of those who swore falsely and met terrible ends. That night, Obiageli tried one last gambit. She hurriedly met with her loyal kinsmen and plotted an escape. We can take Ikenna and flee under cover of darkness, she whispered urgently, to my brother's village over the river. They won't find us before morning, and even if they do, they won't harm the boy. But as fate would have it, Prince Ikenna overheard this hushed conversation. Frightened and confused, he ran to his nurse, who had always been fond of Nneka's family, and babbled that his mother wanted to take him away overnight. The nurse, suspecting foul play, quietly alerted an elder. Before Obiageli could execute her plan, she found the gates of the palace guarded by the village youth and some elders, ostensibly to ensure the queen mother's safety, but in truth, to prevent her flight. She was effectively under watch. At dawn, a search party set out into the forest. Obinna was among them, having quickly stepped forward when volunteers were called. He knew roughly where to go. Along with him were two elders and a couple of young men carrying a stretcher, in case the exiles were too weak. It didn't take long for Obinna to lead them to the vicinity of the hut by the stream. He called out gently, not wanting to alarm the family. Queen Nneka, it's Obinna and the elders from Amago. We have come to take you home. From behind a tree, Nneka emerged slowly, eyes wide with uncertainty. Adaeze and Amara were just behind her, holding onto her wrapper. They looked thin and tired, but very much alive. The elders approached with deep remorse. They knelt before Nneka in a shocking role reversal. Forgive us, Nneka, one elder said, voice quavering. We were misled. We have come to bring you and your children back, if you will allow. The whole village awaits you. You will be given a fair hearing and the chance to clear your name. We seek the truth now, in full. Adaeze squeezed her mother's arms, her heart leaping with cautious hope. Amara began to cry, not out of sorrow this time, but relief at the thought of going home. Nneka herself was overwhelmed. For a moment, she couldn't speak. Then she nodded, tears falling. I forgive you. I will come. I have longed for the truth to come to light. May the gods indeed reveal all. Obinna rushed forward with a shawl and gently draped it around Nneka's shoulder. Noticing the morning chill on them, he also handed Adaeze a small loaf of bread he had tucked into his pocket. Adaeze, in the flurry of emotion, gave him a grateful look that spoke volumes, and he quickly stepped back, remembering they were not alone. They did not need the stretcher, for although weak, the women insisted on walking back on their own 2 feet. The procession returned to Amago quietly, like a solemn parade. When they reached the outskirts of the village, They found almost the entire community gathered around the road. Word had spread quickly that Nneka was coming home. As she and her daughters walked in, villagers dropped to their knees and bowed their heads in respect, some ashamed, some in awe, as if a forgotten princess was returning. Nneka held her head high, one hand gripping each other's hand, though their clothes were tattered and they were barefoot. At that moment, they looked every inch the royal family they truly were. Obegeli was brought out to the village square as well, escorted by elders and a couple of watchful youths. She was dishevelled from a sleepless night, her hair loose under her shawl. When she saw Nneka and the girls, her face drained of colour. Nneka met her eyes calmly across the distance but said nothing. The chief priest prepared the shrine for the oath swearing. It was an ancient tradition. Both parties, in a grave dispute, would swear upon the symbol of the earth deity and drink a little water touched by the deity idols. To swear falsely was to invite the earth vengeance. People believed one could fall sick, or misfortune would strike anyone who lied under oath. Nneka stepped forward without hesitation when called. She placed her hand on the carved symbol of Annie and spoke in a clear, steady voice. I, Nneka, swear before the Almighty God, before Annie, the earth goddess, who hears all truth, and before the spirits of our ancestors, that I did not harm my husband, King Omenoko, and I did not use poison or magic against him. If I lie, may the earth refuse to bear me, and may my ancestors turn away from me. A collective hush fell, broken only by a sniffle from someone in the crowd. Nneka took a deep sip from the bowl of sanctified water. Next was Obegili. The elders beckoned her to come forward. She was shaking. All her cunning and confidence seemed to have melted under the unforgiving gaze of truth. Swear your innocence, Obegili, the held elder said gravely. Obegili's mouth felt dry as sand. She stepped up slowly. In her mind, she thought frantically, perhaps the gods will be merciful. Perhaps nothing will happen if I lie. Or should I confess now and beg for mercy? Her pride and fear battled inside her. She licked her lips and managed to speak, though her voice was low and trembled. I swear that I did not. Her hand hovered above the idol, but she could not bring herself to touch it. Her vision blurred with tears. She recalled Abogidi's words, May your chi have mercy on you. She thought of the king's dying eyes, Ikena's innocent face, the nightmares. Suddenly, it was as if all the weight she had been carrying crushed down at once. Obegili broke. With a strangled sob, she fell to her knees. I cannot, I cannot, I cannot swear it, because it's a lie, she cried out. Gasps and murmurs erupted from the crowd. Obegili looked around wildly. Then her eyes found Ikenna, who stood at the front, having been brought by his nurse. The boy looked back at his mother, frightened and confused. Obegili wept openly now. I'm sorry, Ikenna. I did it for you. I did it for us. The head elder raised his staff for silence. In a stern voice, he commanded, Speak plainly now, Obegili, the truth for all to hear. In halting, agonizing words, Obegili confessed. She admitted to visiting Abogidi to procure poison. She admitted to dosing the king's tea. I was impatient for my son to be king, she said miserably. I was afraid. Afraid the king might leave power in someone else's hand. I let jealousy and ambition consume me. She then described how she planted the doll and poison by Nneka's heart to frame her. Every word felt like a stone in the silent square. Many villagers shook their heads in disbelief that such malice had dwelled in their midst. Some women began to sob, others glared at Obegili with anger. Nneka stood very still as she listened, tears coursing down her cheeks. not only for herself, but for the husband she loved, whose life was taken by someone within their own home. Adaeze and Amara leaned against their mother, crying as the painful truth was laid bare. Obinna, standing near the front, clenched his fist, feeling both vindicated for Nneka and furious at Obegili's betrayal. When Obegili finished, she prostrated herself on the ground, not daring to meet anyone's gaze. I have said the truth. Do with me as you will. The gods have seen my heart. I ask only that you spare my son any shame. He knew nothing of this. Prince Ikenna was crying now, calling, Mother, Mama, in a heart-rending voice as the nurse held him. The elders conferred quietly. The people waited, tense. Justice had to be served. In ages past, the punishment for regicide and witchcraft could be death or permanent banishment. Some in the crowd called out for Begili to be executed, others for her to be exiled forever. Nneka remained quiet, holding her daughters close. She felt empathy for little Ikenna, who was innocent and now effectively an orphan in this mess. Finally, the chief elder raised his hand. People of Amago, justice must be done. Obegili has confessed to a grave crime, the murder of our beloved king and the deception of the entire community. For this, she will face the consequences. We, the council, decree that Obegili shall be stripped of titles and rights. She will not remain among us in Amago. By the laws of our ancestors, she is to be banished beyond the river, never to return. Should she attempt to return, she will face death. There was a murmur of approval. Banishment for life was a severe punishment, essentially a living death, being cut off from everyone. But it spared the village the stain of blood execution and spared Ikenna the horror of seeing his mother killed. The elders continued, As for Prince Ikenna, he is blameless. He shall remain in Amago and continue as our king, under the guardianship of the council, and here the elder turned to Nneka. If she is willing, under the care of Queen Nneka, who has proven her loyalty and goodness. Nneka's eyes widened in surprise at this suggestion. Obegili lifted her head from the dirt, eyes red and pleading, and looked at Nneka. Please, please take care of my boy, she whispered. Nneka's heart, despite everything, was compassionate. She stepped forward and knelt beside the trembling woman. In a soft but clear voice, she said, Obiageli, I will look after Ikenna as if he were my own. I promise. Obegeli let out a wail of sorrow and gratitude, collapsing in tears. It was perhaps the last kindness she would ever receive. The crowd respected Nneka all the more for that gesture. Some even started softly chanting her name in admiration and apology. Nneka, Nneka, the chant grew. And with it, tears freely fell among villagers who felt remorse. They had cast out their gentle pain, and she returned not with vengeance, but with dignity and compassion. The event wrapped up swiftly after that. Obegili was allowed to bid a quick farewell to Ikenna in private, under guard. The boy clung to his mother, both of them crying. Obegili tried to impart some last loving words to her son, telling him to be a good king, and that she was sorry. Then she was led away by a group of able young men who would escort her to the far border. Obegeli would go to her relatives across the great river and live out her days in exile. As she was taken away, she glanced back once to see Nneka holding Ikenna's hand, Adaeze and Amara embracing him too, comforting the weeping boy. It was a bitter sight. Her own treachery had led to this tableau. She turned and walked on, disappearing down the road, a lonely figure surrounded by guards, heading towards a fitting isolation. In the days that followed, Amago slowly returned to normalcy, though scarred by what had happened. Nneka and her daughters were welcomed back into the palace with joy and ceremony. The villagers came with gifts of food, cloth, and other offerings to ask for forgiveness for doubting them and to celebrate their return. Nneka's hut was repaired and cleansed, and she moved back in with her girls. Adize and Amara were overjoyed to have their home again, and they wasted no time reacquainting themselves with the palace grounds. Amara even danced barefoot in the courtyard that first evening back, saying she was celebrating freedom. Prince Ikenna had a difficult time at first understanding it all, but Nneka and Adize took him gently in hand. Nneka became his mother figure from then on, guiding him in his studies and daily routine with the same kindness she had always shown. In time, the boy's trauma eased, and he grew to love his auntie Nneka as a mother once more. Adaeze and Amara were like big sisters to him. They played games with him, and he particularly liked when Amara would make silly faces to cheer him up. The bond between the children helped heal the wounds. Obinna visited the palace openly now, as many young men did for errands, but everyone could see he had a special reason. With the approval of Nneka, he began formally courting Adaeze. It was a sweet and tender courtship. Sometimes they walked together to the stream, reminiscing about the time in exile and sharing dreams about the future. In one romantic moment under the blooming orange trees by the water, Obinna promised Adaeze that he would always stand by her. Come what may, she smiled and teased, even if I become a cranky old lady. And he laughed, especially then, I will be a cranky old man to match. Their laughter rang out like music. Nneka and Ozioma, whose friendship had been tested and proven true, remained close. Often, Ozioma would come visit, and the two women would talk for hours, watching the children play in the compound. The rest of the village women looked to Nneka for leadership more than ever. Impressed by her resilience and forgiving nature, she helped to reinstitute some communal activities that had paused, like the women's cooperative farming and the evening storytelling gatherings. Life took on a hopeful rhythm again. Harvest season came, and this time the yams grew strong and bountiful, as if the land itself had lifted a curse. At the next New Yam festival, a year after the last one, the celebration was especially heartfelt. There was a memorial for King Omenoko, honoring his legacy. Prince Ikenna dressed regally, made an appearance and gave a short speech, with Nneka's help, thanking everyone for their loyalty and vowing to be a good ruler when his time came. The people cheered for their young king, and they cheered for Nneka, calling her Mama of the village, a title of deep respect. As the sun set on the festival day, casting golden light over Amago, Nneka stood with Adaeze and Amara at the edge of the square. Obinna was nearby with his family, and he waved at Adaeze, making her blush happily. Amara tugged her mother's arms and said, Mama, all is well again. Nneka smiled, her eyes moist with graceful tears. She looked over at Prince Ikenna, who was laughing as an elder hoisted him playfully on his shoulders. She then gazed at her daughters and around at the villagers who had once cast them out but now celebrated them. Yes, my child, Nneka said softly, all is well, and justice has prevailed. That night, Nneka told one more story by moonlight, this time to her own family gathered in the courtyard and to a few neighbors who listened in. She told the tale of their recent trials, weaving it like an epic. It began with once upon a time. There was a king with two wives, one kind and one wicked, and it ended with a simple moral that truth, like oil in water, always rises to the top, that patience and goodness will triumph over envy and cruelty in the end. The listeners were moved, and even little Ikenna understood the lesson. And so, in the village of Amago, they lived on with renewed unity and hope. The stars above were bright, and the gentle night breeze carried the echo of children's laughter and the faint note of a folk song. The story of the king and his two wives, and the trials that befell their family would be told for generations in those parts. A reminder that even in the darkest times, courage, love, and justice can light the way to a happy conclusion. Once upon a time, it began, and happily in peace, it ended, as all good stories should. The most important lesson in this story is that evil plans built on jealousy, lies, and hunger for power may succeed for a short time, but truth will always rise, innocence will be restored, and only patience, goodness, and integrity can bring lasting peace and honor to a person and to a community. And with that, my dear friends, our story comes to a close. But remember, the magic of storytelling lives on, waiting to whisk us away on new adventures where the wonders of imagination know no bounds. Goodbye for now, and may your dreams be filled with joy, wonder, and endless possibility. Thank you so much for watching. Please kindly comment, like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more interesting stories.